The soft hum of the airplane's engines echoed through the first-class cabin. Keanu Reeves adjusted his seat, exhaling deeply. After weeks of intense filming and public appearances, he was finally getting a moment to relax. This flight was supposed to be a simple journey home, but one unexpected moment would change everything. Just before takeoff, an elderly man boarded the plane, walking slowly with a dignified posture despite his obvious fatigue. His suit was well-pressed but slightly worn, hinting at years of careful upkeep. His eyes held a mixture of exhaustion and pride. A flight attendant, looking uncomfortable, approached him and whispered something. Keanu, ever observant, noticed the exchange and the unease in the staff member's expression. Sensing something was wrong, he stood up. "Is there a problem?" he asked. The flight attendant hesitated before explaining in a hushed voice. "This gentleman is a war veteran. There was an error in his reservation, and his seat in economy was taken. Unfortunately, we have no more available seats." Keanu looked at the older man, who was trying to hide his discomfort. Without a second thought, he smiled warmly. "I'll take care of it. He can have my seat." A hush fell over the first-class cabin. Nearby passengers paused to take in the moment, some in disbelief. The veteran's eyes widened. "But son, you don't have to do that," the elderly man protested. Keanu simply grabbed his carry-on, placed a gentle hand on the veteran's shoulder, and reassured him. "I insist." Still stunned, the flight crew guided the veteran to the plush first-class seat, while Keanu made his way toward economy. As he passed through the narrow aisle, passengers exchanged curious glances. Some whispered among themselves, while others subtly raised their phones, likely capturing the unexpected moment. But Keanu didn't seem to mind. He simply smiled at the flight attendants and found his new seat. The difference between the two classes was stark. First class had been spacious, luxurious. Here in economy, seats were cramped, legroom minimal. But Keanu didn't complain. He just put on his headphones and settled in. Meanwhile, the war veteran remained somewhat unsettled in his new seat, adjusting to the unexpected luxury. A flight attendant approached him with a kind smile. "Can I get you anything, sir?" After a moment of hesitation, he softly replied, "A coffee, please." As he waited, his fingers unconsciously traced a medal pinned to his lapel, a subtle but significant gesture, as if reliving distant memories. Passengers around him remained quiet, sensing the weight of his presence. It wasn't every day that a war hero was given such a gesture of kindness, let alone by a Hollywood icon. Meanwhile, in the back of the plane, Keanu closed his eyes, attempting to rest, but before he could fully relax, he felt a light tap on his shoulder. He removed his headphones and turned to see a man with a serious but appreciative expression. "Sorry to bother you, but I had to thank you," the man said. Keanu furrowed his brows slightly. "For what?" The man sighed before explaining. "That gentleman up there, he's not just any veteran. He saved lives, mine included." Keanu's expression shifted to one of intrigue. "You know him?" The man nodded and pulled a small pin from his pocket, engraved with a military insignia and a name. "My name is Charles. I served in the military years ago. That man, he carried wounded soldiers under enemy fire, risking his life repeatedly. He never asked for recognition, never sought the spotlight. But to me, and to many others, he's a hero." Keanu glanced toward the first-class section, where the veteran gazed quietly out the window. Charles continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I know to you this might have just been a small act of kindness, but to those who know his story, it means everything. He deserves this." Keanu leaned back in his seat, taking in the weight of what he had just heard. He had offered his seat without a second thought, yet the impact of that simple gesture was far greater than he could have imagined. Before he could process it further, movement in the first-class cabin caught his attention. The flight attendants were speaking quietly with the veteran, concern evident on their faces. Keanu immediately stood up and approached them. "Is he okay?" he asked. One of the attendants turned to him, her expression tense. "He seems to be feeling unwell. It could just be fatigue. We're calling for a doctor on board." Keanu's chest tightened. What had started as a simple flight now carried a far deeper significance. The tension in the cabin grew as the crew worked swiftly. The veteran, though weak, managed a small, tired smile. "All this trouble for me," he murmured. Keanu knelt beside him. If it were the other way around, You wouldn't hesitate to help, right? The veteran nodded faintly, his strength waning. A doctor among the passengers quickly assessed him. His vitals are unstable. We need to prepare for an emergency landing. The pilot's voice soon echoed over the intercom, announcing the unscheduled descent. The veteran's breathing grew labored, and Keanu instinctively took his hand, offering silent support. As the airplane taxied to a stop, the medical team quickly boarded, their faces etched with focus and urgency. Keanu Reeves stepped back, allowing them space to work, while his eyes remained locked on the elderly veteran lying on the stretcher. The paramedics swiftly attached monitoring devices, checking his vitals as they prepared to transport him. The tension in the air was palpable. Keanu could feel his own heartbeat quicken, his mind racing with worry. Just moments ago, this man had been sitting in first class, gazing out the window with a quiet dignity, completely unaware that his body was moments from giving in. When they arrived at the hospital, doctors were already waiting. Keanu watched as they wheeled the veteran away, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. Minutes later, Charles arrived, breathless. "His daughter's here," he said, gesturing toward a woman rushing into the ER with frantic eyes. Keanu stepped forward, his presence calming yet steady. "He's in good hands," he assured her gently. She turned to look at him, her eyes widening in recognition. "You're Keanu Reeves." He nodded, but brushed past the moment. "Your father is a great man," he said sincerely. It was an honor to be there for him today. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for staying with him, for caring." Keanu simply smiled. It was the least I could do. Hours later, as Keanu sat in the quiet hospital waiting room, the doctor finally emerged. "We stabilized him," he announced. "He's going to be okay." A deep breath Keanu hadn't realized he was holding escaped from his chest. Charles patted his back. "You know this whole thing is going to go viral, right?" Keanu shook his head with a smirk. "Doesn't matter. What matters is that he's okay." A few days later, Keanu received a message. It was from the veteran's daughter. "My father wants you to know that he will never forget what you did for him. He said if you ever want to visit, our home is always open for you." Keanu smiled as he read the word. Fame and fortune were fleeting, but moments like these, they were what truly mattered. And in that moment, he felt something shift within him. The world had plenty of heroes on screen. What it needed were more heroes in real life. And you, what do you think of Keanu's attitude? Do you think he was right to honor the war veteran? Leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching the video.